welcome. I'm happy to see you all. And we are going to be talking about how to offer compassionate support to someone in grief. We'll be together for about 45 minutes. And in that time, I'll introduce myself and say some things, present some ideas about approaching grief, being present with grief. I'll offer a short meditation practice that we can do together. And then there'll certainly be time before we close for your questions or comments. We can have a little discussion. In these sessions that are just 45 minutes long, experience shows us that the time tends to go by pretty quickly. So if you have questions as we go along, you're welcome to enter them into the chat, and Lev will kind of track those and we'll circle back to them at the end. And if it feels like there's a lot that we haven't gotten to, I'm open to staying a little bit past 1 if there are sort of loose ends to tie up. Okay, we'll see how that goes. And then again, appreciating your presence here in this session. And if you appreciate what you experience here with us today, I encourage you, if you haven't already, to sign up for our mailing list. As you probably already know, Zen Caregiving Project is a small nonprofit. So any kind of support, your involvement, small donations, checking in with our website regularly, we appreciate you in all those ways. Yeah, so thank you again. So let me say hi, I'm Mary Doan, and I'm the Senior Instructor for Education Programs at Zen Caregiving Project. I have been around this community since 2005, and I really haven't left. I started as a volunteer bedside caregiver at that time, and I've worn various hats since then, and am so grateful and privileged to continue to serve our work and be a member of the staff now. The things that we'll discuss today, these contemplative practices, compassion, self-compassion, silence, presence, as well as meditation, these are things that I not only teach, but I turn to them, lean on them, draw from them, cultivate them in my own life. So I have a lot of trust in this territory. So let me say a word about National Grief Awareness Day, which is today, August 30th. And I'll just read here from their description of this really important national day now, dedicated to raising awareness of the myriad ways in which individuals cope with loss, and reminding us to support people we know who are grieving. So this National Grief Awareness Day was founded in 2014, and they say they hope to encourage open communication on loss and bereavement and to better inform the public on the facts of grief. So I noted the mention of personal losses, which of course are how most of us encounter and experience grief and try to grapple with it. But it feels important also at this time to just mention collective grief. As we look around our homes, our countries, our planet, wherever you happen to be logging in from, there's so much from COVID itself, of course, global pandemic, but natural disasters. I'm on the West Coast in California. We have wildfires and smoke in the air, and we're seeing what's happening in Louisiana and many, many other examples. So the collective grief is real and enormous right now. So let us honor that as we come together as well. So let me say a few things about grief. Grief is universal, right? It's something that we all experience as humans. And unfortunately, it's stigmatized still. Very few of us live in cultures where there's kind of modeling, good modeling for being in grief, for making space for grief. So it's this kind of interesting tension that it's a universal experience, yet there's a lot of stigma around it. Through Zen caregiving projects, more than 30 years of work now at the bedside and educating caregivers, we really have a very trustworthy approach to this, where we're not just not denying suffering and grief, but we're consciously, actively turning towards these most human of experiences. And as human beings, we share some common fundamental truths, one of which is that we all will experience loss. You don't get through a human life without experiencing loss. This is just how it is. So grieving is something that actually connects us to others. And when we make the courageous step of facing this head on, we open the possibility of experiencing connection and support. And we can trust that others have walked this path of grief before us, and others will walk it after us. So there are no shortcuts really through grief, or sort of easy ways out, but grief is natural. Grief is appropriate. Grief is even, I would offer, a healthy human response to loss. So as difficult as grief can be, the presence of grief doesn't mean that something is wrong. Sad, surely. Terrible and tragic, possibly, but not wrong. This is a natural occurrence, even a healthy response. Some wise teachers refer to grief as a skill, something we can learn to do well, cultivating grace and wisdom through this experience. There's a poet, Jennifer Wellwood, who speaks to this, and she writes, "Let's grieve our losses fully, like ripe human beings." When someone is grieving and we are with them or want to be with them, the most human thing that we can offer is our presence. Our presence. Author and educator Parker Palmer speaks to this beautifully. And he writes, "The human soul doesn't want to be advised or fixed or saved. It simply wants to be witnessed." So let us not underestimate the power of that kind of support, witnessing presence. And one tool of this witnessing is silence. So let us also not underestimate silence. Silence can be uncomfortable for many of us. We're not sort of fluent in silence, but it's often a great gift to a grieving person. When we can just be with someone in that discomfort, we're offering support that goes beyond words. We may feel that it's best to say something. We may feel like we want to say anything rather than just be silent. But in the face of uncomfortable and painful feelings that grief often stirs up, allowing for silence can actually be very comforting. So I invite you to try that out in your lives and see how it goes. It's very natural to want to distract someone from their grief, but grief really deserves to be acknowledged and to be felt, excuse me. So as painful as grief can be, grief is not something to be fixed. And it's useful to check in with ourselves about our motivation. And if in checking in with ourselves, we find that we want to speak out of our own discomfort, and our aim maybe is to just not feel that discomfort, to not deal with it, to deny it, we may be setting ourselves up for a greater likelihood of saying something that isn't as helpful as we would want it to be. When someone is grieving, however, they still can and often do have access to humor and to enjoyment. And it's wonderful and beautiful if we can participate in those. So a good kind of general guideline is to take the lead from the grieving person. Yeah. And to expect to be imperfect when we're interacting and communicating, right? I think this is true regardless, and certainly in the territory of grief. So let us kind of let ourselves off the hook in advance and just know that it's not going to go perfectly well. And that we're trying it out. We're coming with an open heart and a sincere wish to be of support. And we're willing to have it be messy because it is messy. That said, there's a few kind of pretty clear guidelines from experience, my own personal experience, and in the work that we do. Things that are generally unhelpful, the kind of no-nos, are platitudes, things that deny the reality of grief. To say, at least something worse didn't happen, or to say, well, everything happens for a reason, this kind of thing. Things that are denying the truth of the pain of the situation tend to not be the most successful or supportive ways to speak. Better options, signaling our presence, back to that presence, that witnessing, and our willingness to be there in this disorienting territory of grief. Yeah, not knowing what to do, maybe even saying that, I don't really know what to say, but I'm here with you. Sharing memories. Often, not always, but often grieving people are very much in memories and want to share memories of a loved one who has been lost. And that we can participate in that, right? Not to shy away from it. So signaling our presence, our willingness to be with them. And in doing all of this, being able to ground ourselves can really help us stay open and be a comforting, witnessing presence, for someone who is grieving. Grounding ourselves in the moment, so that we can be fully present for another. So with that, I'd like to offer a practice, meditation practice that we can do together now. And I hope you'll join me. This is completely optional, but you're very invited to give it a try. Let me show you first, before we enter into the practice, this is going to contain a little bit of hand movement. So I want to show you that first, and then we can do it together. So at a couple times during this practice, I'll be asking you to just put a hand here on your chest, and then to lift the hand and kind of turn your palm outward. So it's kind of focusing on yourself and then focusing on outward and others. Okay, so those will be the two hand movements that I'll suggest and invite. Again, completely optional. So I invite you to allow your eyes to close if that's comfortable for you. You can certainly leave your eyes open and just gently look down towards the floor. And settle into your body a little bit, maybe just feeling the weight of your body on the chair or wherever you're seated right now, feeling the structure that is supporting you, sensing the places of contact between your body and wherever you're sitting, So just bringing a little bit of gentle attention, maybe to the backs of the legs, and to the seat and the hips. Tuning into the feet, wherever they're resting, they're flat on the floor. A sense of rootedness and groundedness. And then as we settle into the body, becoming aware of the rhythm of the breath. And just resting here for a moment. Sensing the quality of your breath. Sensing the depth. You might be aware of if your breath is deep right now, or if your breath is shallow right now. And just bringing this sense of not needing to change anything, but just meeting this moment as it is. And whether you are familiar with practice of this kind or whether you're unfamiliar, it's likely that you'll notice your mind wandering. And when you do notice that, just gently return your awareness to the rhythm of the breath in the body. So now I invite you to bring a hand to your chest over your heart in a gesture of warmth and compassion for yourself. And just let yourself feel this support and warmth. It might be subtle. This doesn't have to be a big experience. Even just tuning into the weight of your hand gently placed on your chest. My hand feels a little cool right now, actually. Just expressing warmth and compassion towards yourself with this simple gesture. And then on your next exhalation, I invite you to extend your hand out, just lifting it from your chest and turning the palm out. And over your next few breaths, I invite you to do this a few times, bringing the hand to the chest, gently resting it there, and then extending the hand, offering that same warmth and compassion out towards the world, towards others. So breathing in, hand on your own chest, breathing out, extending that gesture outward. Just doing this gently at your own pace for a few breaths. Breathing in, the hand resting on your own chest. Breathing out, extending the hand and the palm outward. The same warmth and compassion towards ourselves, towards others. And then let your hand come to rest, either on your chest if you like, or back down on your lap or at your side. And now I'm going to move into a different part of the practice and ask you to think about a time when you have experienced loss. So I invite you to try this out, but I also, at the same time, want everyone to feel safe. So if this isn't appropriate for you right now, then just listen to my voice, but you don't have to actively engage. But the invitation is to think just generally of what do you need when you face loss? When you face loss, what do you need? So can you gently picture yourself at a time when you have experienced loss and experienced grief? And think of what you needed then. Was there something that you wanted to hear from those you trust? Was there anything in particular that you didn't need or want? And this may come up with clarity for you. It may not. There's no right or wrong here. It might just be a felt sense. Might be something specific. And can you picture yourself receiving what you need? Whether or not you got it at the time from others, can you offer it to yourself now? So just feeling yourself receiving whatever it is that you feel you need at a time when you are grieving, facing loss. Just breathing with that for 1 or 2 breaths. And now I invite you to picture yourself offering this support that you've just received, offering it to someone else. So feeling what you need and offering that out to someone else. Can you picture that? What comes up when you do picture that? Connected to our own humanity and connected to the humanity of others. And if you like, you might try linking this again to the rhythm of the breathing. So as you're breathing in, that feeling of receiving what you need. And as you're breathing out, that feeling of offering this to another. And if we really want to try to bring it all in concert, I invite you to bring the hand movement back in. So breathing in with a hand on the heart, receiving what you need, and breathing out with the palm turned outward, offering that out to someone else. And just finding a gentle rhythm with that, however it's possible for you right now. Breathing in, hand on the chest, receiving what we need. Breathing out, palm turned outward, offering what's needed to others. Maybe 1 or 2 more moments here. Support, compassion for ourselves. Support and compassion for others. Breathing in and breathing out. And then I invite you to release the movement and release the imagining, and just spend a moment or two in the awareness of your breath moving in your body. Letting the hand be still, releasing the practice. Connecting back to feeling your feet on the floor. Feeling the weight of your body. Feeling the support of whatever is beneath you. And then, as you're ready, lifting your gaze or opening your eyes if they've been closed, and tuning into the screen here. As I'm doing, it's good to see all your faces. And if you have a functioning camera and it's appropriate for you to turn it on, love to invite you to do that. And from here, I thought we could check in, and any responses to the practice, any questions. And I think Love can unmute people if you are not able to unmute yourselves. Yeah, I know it can, not everyone feels brave to be the first one to speak up in a large group like this, but I bet someone has something. So please raise your hand or just call out. Oh, I think I see, thank you. Is it Eugene?
That question of what I really need when I'm grieving, I was thinking of just being listened to. And then my mind immediately went to how long I've wanted that for, and times when I was a kid where I've been grieving, like the loss of a relationships and like the end of the TV show and like the death of a pet, and just always just wanting someone to just listen. And as soon as there was the assumption, I guess, that my grief should be finishing, that it should be wrapping up, and that I should be moving on, that would make me want to grieve more. And then thinking how I can bring that into my practice.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Eugene. I think really you are pointing towards something that many of us can relate to. Yeah, and this power of silence, that willingness to just listen, just be there. And how even with the best intentions, many of us are really uncomfortable and kind of don't know how to do that, or it feels counterintuitive, right? To just be there, to just listen. Yeah, not distract, not make it end sooner. Yes, exactly. Thank you. And I see, thank you, Allison. Don't just do something, stand there. Yeah, I remember with, same thing with a meditation instruction. Don't just do something, sit there. Yes, beautiful. I think I saw a raised hand, but then I lost it. Is it Julie? Yeah.
Hi. So what I would like to share is that, let me just turn my camera on. Okay.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you.
I feel like, I really don't understand grief yet. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. You know, my dad passed away last month, and like, I don't know, at first it was just pouring out. My feelings were just pouring out. And now I'm at the point where like, I'm like resistant. You know, I feel like, well, why go and do that? Why go and sit and cry? And then I'm not going to even feel better. Like, I'm just sharing what's true for me right now, you know, of like, I really don't understand, you know, like, what's the point? I don't even feel better afterwards.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for giving voice to that pain. Yeah. I don't know. There's not a secret. There's not a secret, right? That's being kept from all of us. Grief is mysterious, right? We know it's universal. We know it's real. We know there's no escape from it, but we don't really know much more than that. It can't be sort of tamed. It has its own agenda. It has its own timeline. It doesn't look the same for everyone. Yeah, yeah, it's something to be honored. Um, and it can last. It can get really big. It might fade a little bit and then come roaring back. Yeah, this is the nature of it. Yeah. So thank you
Okay.
for naming that. And I'm
Thank you.
sorry, yeah, about the loss of your dad. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So courageous. Yeah, we throw that word around and we're like, well, it doesn't feel brave because I have no choice. But to be in the truth of the difficulty, the pain, the uncertainty, the wanting it to be different. Yeah, that takes a lot of courage. How about others? Any comments, questions, rants? It's all welcome. Do I see Naomi?
Yeah,
Hi.
it was just a real comment in that exercise. What I found when I've lost people is I want to talk about them. I want to remember them. I want to share who they were and the things I remember about them. And yet I feel very resistant to asking people about the person who's deceased. If I'm supporting someone in grief, because I somehow think I'm causing them pain to remember it, and maybe they don't want to talk about it. So that was just a really good learning for me, that obviously you don't want to demand someone talks about them, but providing that space and even prompting questions like, do you want to share some memories of them? Or, you know, how do you, when you talk about them, what do you think about? Is just giving them space. Whereas previously I would have been like, do no harm, don't want to talk about it. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, for that reflection. And I think it's really natural that we don't want to make things worse. We don't want to make a sad person feel more sad. So it can be a little counterintuitive, but I think just what you say is really skillful to like make it a question, right? Yeah, would you like to tell me a story? Or maybe you share a memory, something like that. Yeah, thank you. Great, I think Eli's hand was up first and then Pat, so please. And correct my pronunciation of your name if I got it wrong. Hi. And you're on mute still. Great.
Hi, Eli here.
Hi.
A very similar comment to the one right previous, which is to say, I live in a fire area that was affected by wildfire last year, and a lot of people lost their houses, and we did not, but living around a lot of people who did, and you know, I don't know all of them very well, and when I try to go there with people, sometimes it's wanted and sometimes it's really not, and I feel very unskillful about being a safe person for them for that, or not pushing them too much. And what it's brought up for me too is just that I don't have a lot of practice talking about things that aren't surface, even when we're not that are difficult. It's pretty easy for me to keep it on a very shallow level with acquaintances.
Yeah.
So that's what I've observed for myself.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. And you were a little, your audio was a little wobbly, so I think I didn't hear everything that you say or said. But yeah, it can be hard. It is hard to know what's the right thing, or to offer something and it's just not the right thing. It doesn't land the way we hope it will. And this is part of that kind of willingness to try it out and to just maybe plan ahead of time for some clunkers, right? That we're just going to have some poor connections in that regard. And to just have a lot of compassion and kindness and maybe even humor for ourselves when that happens, because this is how it is. It's messy. It's unpredictable. So I think the last thing I might say, just in response to what you share, Eli, is that, checking in with being as clear and grounded as you can with your own heart and your own intention to want to be of support and connect in a way that's helpful. And sometimes that will happen and sometimes it just won't, but that's okay. Yeah. Doesn't mean that you or any of us are bad at this. Yeah. Thank you for the comments. Yeah.
I wanted to talk about the memories bit, because I think one fear that people have, at least I felt this when my mother died. She died almost 4 years ago. And is that people are afraid that their loved one is just going to be forgotten. And I think the more you talk about memories, it helps to make them alive again. And whenever I write a sympathy card, I try to include some nice memory. And people seem to really like that. And I also have to say this talk is very well timed for me because I'm going to a funeral tomorrow. And it's a neighbor of my mother's who was always very kind to her. And he passed away. He was 94. He passed away from COVID. And but anyway, that's what I wanted to say about just the whole memories thing, because it helps to keep the person from being forgotten. And I think that's a fear that people do have, that they'll be forgotten.
Yeah. Thank you, Pat. Very much so. I think one real element of grief, fear, as you're saying, but that, when a loved one dies, we who remain are we're carrying alone what we had carried along with someone before in terms of memories and shared experiences. So to have others, chime in and share memories and sort of remind us that even though our grief is unique, and if it's a spouse or a family member, it's only one person in that relationship, but this kind of co-carrying the memories, both the joy of them and the grief of them, I think is a really beautiful offering. And I hope that it is a supportive and healing experience tomorrow at that funeral, and you'll get a chance maybe to work with some of this right there and then. Thank you. And I saw a hand was up, but now I feel like it's back down. I don't know if someone raised their hand and then lowered it, but let me just check. Oh, was it Terry? Thank you. Hi, Terry. Don't forget to unmute yourself so we can hear you.
Yes. I lost my husband about 14 years ago. He was only 53 years old, but I'm an extrovert. However, when my husband died, I became an introvert, and I didn't, for months, I wouldn't even call people back. And now that I work in hospice, I understand that people deal with grief differently. I don't know, my next loss, how I'm going to react. I may revert right back to not talking or answering calls. I just didn't have the energy to do any of that. I mean, just to even get out of bed some days. So the one thing about grief is that it's personal, and everybody reacts differently. And I've made some big mistakes with expecting people to act like me during grief, but they had their own way of dealing with it. And that's the wonderful thing I love about working in hospice now, is that I've learned that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm sorry for the loss of your husband. That's younger than me, so that's way, way, way too young. And how beautiful that all of that hard-won wisdom you now bring to the work you do. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
So thank you for that. And absolutely true. It reflects my experience 100%. This is so personal. Yeah. There's a few things universally we can say are true, that it exists. There's no way around it. But yeah, what it's going to look like, how it's going to express itself, how long it's going to last, what we're going to need, and that it's going to change, right? What's true today in grief is not going to be true tomorrow. Yeah, for a grieving person. So thank you. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I'm looking at the clock. We're coming up on the hour, but let me just see. Yes, thank you. And that, Pat, also you shared in the chat that no one is 100% extrovert or introvert. Absolutely.
Hi, hello, my name is Carrie. Thank you so much for this and just for everyone's comments. I really appreciate them. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to corporate grief. As a work, I do have a little more familiarity with individual grief and working with families or individuals who have lost something. But I've recently had in the opportunity of working with healthcare workers, there's a lot of moments that I have the opportunity to do corporate grief, but not really sure what that looks like, especially for healthcare workers that are still in the midst of really not even having the opportunity to work through grief for this past year. And I'm hearing a lot of comments when I try to create moments of, it's too painful to think about this past year. And my concern of the burnout of even like, how do I help create these moments for my coworkers?
Yeah, wow. This is huge. It's huge. And right now, and in the healthcare field in particular, as you say. So this corporate grief, collective grief, again, I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer. This is enormous. I think we are at a time now, because of this, the level of collective grief, collective trauma that we're all so aware of. This is going to be unfolding for a long time to come, and we can't predict exactly what it's going to look like. That said, I think anytime you want to support or respond to collective or corporate grief, to remember that within that corporation, within that collective, there are a whole bunch of individuals, so that these things are pretty much going to hold true in the same way. Really honoring our experience. I would say if there's a way within a corporate culture to make as much space as possible, to model self-care in responding to grief, whatever that looks like, to make forums, for sort of sharing, that are not about fixing or getting through it quickly, really staying at that very basic kind of human level, and just to keep acknowledging that it's an enormous experience, an enormous task, if you will, to hold a kind of collective or corporate grief, and that there isn't a cure, but to keep naming it, keep normalizing it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Very helpful.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, so relevant. So let me check. I see a couple of chat comments. Wonderful. So a couple of folks who just needed to leave early. Yeah, so what else? We're at a minute past, but if there are things, anything burning, I know some people are the hand on the doorknob, but wait, I want to say something, folks, so let me make space. If anything else, any comments or questions? Eugene, you're gonna, yeah, oh, the sunglasses are on. Okay, you changed direction maybe, or the sun moved. No, I didn't, you don't have to take them off. I was just noticing the difference. Yeah.
No worries. No, look, I just want to say thank you as well for the whole session here in BC, well, all across North America, but here in BC in particular, there's been these mass graves that have been unearthed around the residential schools all across North America, and that's leading to like an outpouring of grief, but it's also leading to like an outpouring of denial,
Mm.
and like minimization and the whole 9 yards around how that's acknowledged. And as a counselor, I have people coming into the space all the time, and some will just let fly and say that it's all a big conspiracy and none of it is real, and they'll express anger and frustration. When they have those conversations outside of counseling, people either agree with them or it's completely kind of, it's met with like a lot of antagonism. And so now, like as a result of this session today, I'm thinking for the first time whether they're actually grieving like the loss of the image they had of Canada being a very peaceful country, and whether by complaining to me about it, I'm holding space for their grief. Not that I was ever disagreeing with them, but just whether it's a part of their healing. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for that reflection. Yeah, and thank you for the work you're doing to hold space for people who are in all these different places. Yeah. All right. Well, unless, Lev, you are seeing something that I'm not seeing, I think we can say thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciate your showing up and participating. And please check back with us. Stay in touch via the website. Get on our mailing list if you're not already there. We have various programming that we offer by donation and for free like this. We have educator courses, fee-based, donations. None are too small, always welcome. So just thank you so much for being with us today.